The grand halls of the royal residence had witnessed centuries of celebrations, coronations, triumphs, and heartbreak. Yet on this particular morning, even the seasoned staff sensed that something unusual was unfolding. Conversations stopped the moment footsteps echoed across the polished marble floors. Advisors exchanged uncertain glances. Senior officials quietly disappeared behind heavy oak doors. Whatever had happened overnight was important enough to silence an entire palace. No official statement had been released. No royal appearance had been added to the calendar. Still, rumors spread with remarkable speed. According to whispers circulating among palace insiders, a confidential legal review had reached its conclusion. The document, prepared after months of examining historic agreements, private correspondence, and long-forgotten family arrangements, allegedly centered on one surprising figure, Prince Edward. Those whispers became impossible to ignore when reports emerged that Edward's legal team had completed their own independent review. What they reportedly confirmed left everyone asking the same question. Had Edward quietly become entitled to something everyone assumed had been settled years ago? The possibility alone sent shockwaves throughout royal circles. For decades, royal observers had focused almost exclusively on King Charles, Prince William, and the future of the monarchy. Edward had consistently maintained a lower public profile, dedicating much of his time to official duties without seeking headlines or public confrontation. That made the latest development all the more unexpected. Those familiar with palace history knew that succession was only one part of royal life. Beyond the crown existed countless estates, trusts, ceremonial responsibilities, historical collections, charitable patronages, and carefully negotiated family agreements. Many of these arrangements had evolved over generations and often remained hidden from public discussion. Could one of those forgotten agreements now be changing everything? That question suddenly dominated every private conversation. According to fictional palace sources in this story, Edward's lawyers had spent months reviewing archival material that few people had examined in decades. Every signature, every amendment, and every handwritten note had reportedly been analyzed with extraordinary attention. The conclusion they allegedly reached was astonishing. Certain historic provisions had never been formally withdrawn. Instead, they had simply faded into the background as newer priorities captured public attention. If true, that meant Edward's position inside the royal family's legal framework could be considerably stronger than many observers had believed. Inside the palace, senior advisors reportedly gathered for an emergency consultation. No cameras, no press, only carefully guarded discussions. Some believed the matter could be resolved quietly. Others warned that ignoring the findings might create even greater complications later. Meanwhile, Edward himself remained characteristically composed. Those who knew him described him as someone who rarely allowed speculation to influence his public responsibilities. Rather than responding emotionally, he continued attending scheduled engagements exactly as planned. That calm demeanor only intensified curiosity. If there truly was nothing significant to discuss, why had legal experts become involved? Why had historical records suddenly become so important? And why did everyone appear unusually cautious whenever the topic arose? Across the country, commentators began revisiting decades of royal history. Old interviews resurfaced. Historic photographs were analyzed. Family timelines were reconstructed. Observers searched for overlooked clues that might explain why Edward's name had unexpectedly become central to an unfolding legal mystery. Some pointed toward long-standing traditions established generations earlier. Others focused on the distinction between constitutional authority and private family inheritance. The difference, they argued, could prove absolutely crucial. After all, inheriting the throne was not the same as inheriting family assets, responsibilities, or rights established under private agreements. That distinction had often confused the public. Now it was receiving renewed attention. Within hours, speculation reached unprecedented levels. Some believed the legal review involved a historic estate. Others suggested it concerned stewardship of an important trust. Still others wondered whether ceremonial responsibilities attached to an ancient agreement had unexpectedly become active again. Every theory seemed more dramatic than the last. Yet nobody outside the palace claimed to possess the complete picture. As fictional reports continued circulating, attention inevitably shifted toward King Charles. Would he publicly address the matter? Would Buckingham Palace issue clarification? Or would silence remain the preferred strategy? Royal historians noted that periods of uncertainty often encouraged even more speculation. In the absence of official explanations, every gesture, every appearance, and every carefully chosen word acquired greater significance. Even routine engagements suddenly attracted extraordinary attention. When Edward appeared at a scheduled event, photographers closely observed his interactions with senior family members. A simple handshake became headline news. A brief smile generated countless interpretations. The atmosphere surrounding every public appearance changed almost overnight. Meanwhile, constitutional experts emphasized that many assumptions circulating online were based on incomplete information. Historic royal arrangements were often extraordinarily complex, involving legal instruments that differed significantly from ordinary inheritance practices. That complexity only deepened public fascination. Behind palace walls, fictional advisors reportedly began preparing for multiple possible outcomes. If Edward's lawyers were correct, adjustments might eventually become necessary. Not dramatic constitutional changes, not immediate shifts in royal leadership, but administrative and ceremonial decisions that could influence future planning. Those possibilities encouraged even more questions. Had previous assumptions overlooked important legal language? Had historical agreements simply been misunderstood? Or had changing circumstances unexpectedly revived provisions that had remained dormant for generations? Nobody seemed entirely certain. What everyone agreed upon, however, was that the discussion had become impossible to ignore. For years, public attention had centered elsewhere. Now Edward occupied the very center of an unfolding royal debate. Even commentators who rarely mentioned him found themselves discussing his role in unprecedented detail. The sudden shift surprised almost everyone. Some longtime palace observers recalled earlier moments when seemingly insignificant documents eventually transformed major royal decisions. History, they argued, often turned upon paperwork rather than dramatic public confrontations. Perhaps this situation would prove no different. As evening approached, lights remained visible inside administrative offices long after most staff had departed. Legal advisors continued reviewing files. Private secretaries coordinated confidential meetings. Senior officials carefully evaluated every possible implication. Outside the gates, journalists waited patiently for any indication that an announcement might finally arrive. None came. Instead, the silence continued. Sometimes silence speaks louder than words. Inside the fictional narrative, Edward reportedly met privately with trusted advisors before leaving without making any public remarks. Witnesses described him as calm, focused, and entirely unhurried. Whatever his legal team had discovered, he appeared confident enough to allow the process to unfold naturally. That confidence fueled another wave of speculation. Had the evidence become overwhelming? Was an agreement already being negotiated behind closed doors? Or was the palace simply taking time to verify every historical detail before responding? The answers remained hidden. Yet one thing had become undeniable. The quiet prince who had spent years avoiding unnecessary attention had suddenly become the center of one of the most intriguing royal mysteries in recent memory. And according to whispers echoing through every corner of the palace, the documents that Edward's lawyers had assembled were only the beginning. Because the next revelation, insiders claimed, wouldn't merely explain what Edward might inherit. It could also reveal why those rights had remained disputed for so many years, and who stood to lose the most if the legal interpretation proved impossible to challenge. The palace corridors remained unusually quiet as anticipation reached its peak. Then, according to this fictional account, Edward's legal advisors reaffirmed their position, insisting that history, not headlines, would determine the outcome. No dramatic confrontation followed, only a reminder that royal legacies are often shaped by carefully preserved documents rather than public opinion. Whether the findings would ultimately alter family responsibilities or simply close a chapter long left unresolved remained uncertain. But one thing was clear: The revelation had prompted the entire royal family to revisit its past, proving that even the oldest traditions can still hold unexpected surprises.